a country that keeps quiet when leaders, ministers give hate speeches, when women are trolled, when men who are convicted of gang rape are released and given freedom, when media peddles misinformation and does not correct it. This boy was a kid.
And I request Big B and celebrities to come forward and support this child because as a parent, that's the least I would expect. He's been invited to your channel.
We all know social media. There's going to be another child, there's going to be another person, there's going to be another episode.
We've spent the last few days trolling a 10-year-old child, a kid who was overconfident, maybe sassy, maybe braggy, and outside the boundaries of what we consider to be a well brought up child. But he is a kid. He is in class 5. And perhaps the magnitude of the moment to be on KBC, to be in front of Amitabh Bachchan, to be on national television all played its part. As the adult in the room, what is the excuse for trolling a kid? Hello, I am Jyotsna and welcome once again to Table Talk with Joe and on our mini series called Secret Lives. Take it from someone who's been trolled a number of times that it does impact you at some point. And I am more than 40 years older than this boy. So will it scar him? Will it scar his parents? So we're trying to bring a little bit of sanity here today, and I've got two wonderful guests. Vedika Podar, she is joining me from Mumbai. She runs Kangaroo Minds and she does a lot of rural outreach as well. Also joining me is Shibani Chand Sethi, who is a mother, but more than that, she does everything that is related to books and to authors. And I've been hosted by her as well, and it was an incredible interview. Ladies, thank you for joining me and for hoping to get some semblance, as I said, of rationality into what seems to be a place from where, we've completely lost the plot. So, Vedika, I'm going to kick off with you. When you hear of an episode like this, what goes through your mind?
I think, when I first saw that clip and it was going around on WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram and all those platforms, initially, my first thought was that, how many children in India get the opportunity to go on shows like KBC, right? Which is known to be almost like the pinnacle of celebrating intelligence and aspiration in children. So even for that child, even for his parents, just the opportunity, like you said, to sit across a legend, to be on the hot seat, not just, as one of the 10, 12 contestants, it is something like a dream come true. And imagine 3 seconds or just few minutes of that video going viral suddenly makes that your biggest nightmare. So coming from the place as a psychologist, as someone who works with a lot of young children and young people and families, I think one of the things that stood out to me first, even before we got into seeing the way a lot of mental health professionals and other health professionals commented, was the memes. And my first thought was, are we scarring this child for life? We don't know this child. This child never gave us consent for us to pick apart his life. His parents never gave us that consent for us to, sit at home and diagnose him or label him or some other people in the field have suggested about his upbringing, about his parenting, about, what kind of a childhood he may have had, or what kind of a future he's going to have as well. There have been a lot of comments on what this child is going to grow up to be. And I don't think we had that right to do any of it. But more than thinking about, how this child behaved, etc., I think the thing that stood out for me was the way we behaved as the adults in the room. And also to sort of take a step back and ask those questions that where were we when we had to safeguard this child? So has there also been a systemic failure, whether it's been the organizers of the show, whether it's been celebrities who generally do jump up to support, other celebrity children if they are getting trolled or, mocked in this manner by the internet, or also the bodies in charge of child protection and child welfare, because somewhere we have failed this child and his family. Families, ordinary families, non celebrity families, or even celebrity families for that matter, are not trained to deal with this kind of trolling or hatred, or just suddenly becoming the most hated child almost on the internet, or the most trolled or the most condemned parents on the internet. And I'm really glad that you are doing this conversation coming from a space where we are looking at it from the point of view of what could have been different, how could we have responded. And just for the parents as well, who might be watching this, the child's parents or the child's family members who might, we don't know the kind of hate they might be receiving, the kind of social ostracization they might be experiencing. We don't know what they're experiencing right now as an aftermath of uh, that little edited video of a very scripted show going viral, because we all know that what we see on television, it's not live. These are shows which are shot, edited, takes after takes, retakes, scripts exist in these spaces. So I think just for the parents to also know, and of course, for the child, for everybody around that child, that, one clip or just anonymous, faceless adults who can't put a name face to their comment really doesn't say as much about their child or their parenting.
Shivani, was, there are two aspects to it. I mean, this is obviously, as Vedika said, I mean, it's a scripted part, and a particular part has been, we all know, we are in that business. A particular part has been taken out, which is now, it seems like, it could be enabled. It's enabled by the producers, it's enabled by the editors, it's enabled by that last person who has given the go ahead for this particular clip to be aired, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where,
So, firstly, Jyotsna, thank you for having me on the show. But your question is it about the impact on the child, or what is it
no,
that you want? I have lots of
also
thoughts.
that the second part of the question is that there's a line that we always draw when, and that line is the children. I mean, we spoke a lot about it when Aryan Khan was, when he was sent to jail, and the kind of misinformation, trolling that happened. And we spoke about that line having been crossed. And he was still in his 20s. This boy is 10 years old. This line has been crossed over and over again. Why is no one speaking about it?
So I have, I actually watched the video only after you mentioned to me about this talk. Very honestly, while I read about it, I didn't give it much attention, primarily because it was a child. And I know that no show until date, and especially with the Big B, will ever be screened if it has not gone through 100 cuts and whatever else. So I genuinely think, and as Vedika mentioned, it's staged, it's scripted. Kids of this age group are typically very excitable, and imagine getting them onto television. You're the chosen one. I'm just guessing it's nervous energy. Needless to mention that there are etiquette and mannerisms and a way that one behaves. I'm not expecting a 10-year-old of this generation to know firstly who Amitabh Bachchan is. So that is one point. Assuming that he's been told that he is the god of Indian cinema, etc. I'm still imagining that it doesn't matter to the child, because for the child, it's just the big fact that he's going to be on television and period. My point here is that, considering that the child did what he did and it is considered rude and he's being trolled, what were the parents in the audience sitting there clapping at everything that he did for? Why were they clapping if they had such issues with the way that they felt that he reacted, So if you watch the entire video, that is what I was focusing on. I wasn't focusing on how the child speaks. It's very natural. He's talking to a grandparent. I'm guessing that he this is a nuclear family with a single child. And in Japan, I think it's the six pocket syndrome, which is typically the one that where you overindulge in a single child. And we've had one before we had our second one for the longest time. And he got whatever he wanted. Of course, because he went to a school very similar to the ones that we went to rather. His discipline was far more than the kids of today, and that includes my daughter who's much younger. But I'm just thinking that he's imagining that he's talking to his grandparents, and that's the way they speak at home. This child was speaking very normally, like, and very restless. If you saw, you don't have to tell me the questions. I already know it. You can lock it. So he's
Yeah,
somebody who's watched television.
yeah.
He's not allowed Amitabh Bachchan to speak his options. And Amitabh Bachchan just said, "Okay, so let me just say it for the audience. मैं आपको कह रहा हूँ आप lock कीजिए," which obviously means that it's scripted. It seems so scripted. I see no reason why a child should be trolled. The second part of it is about, parents getting impacted. Of course, the parents are going to get impacted because for them, firstly, to send a child as young as 10 years on television was a big thing and it was joy. Now that whole thing is turned into, a trauma, if anything else. I just think they should leave the child alone. Yes, I think it is also important, and it is imperative for the television or that program director to have warned or directed the child in the right direction. I'm sure they give them a script and give them the guidelines. Was he given the guidelines? I'm sure if you've taken a 10-year-old child into a series of this nature and sitting with the big B, I'm guessing that he would have been told, this is the way you have to work. Was he given those guidelines? And if he's gone beyond those, then that is a question. I don't know why trolling a 10-year-old child by that one, like you rightly said, somebody who's nobody knows is appropriate. I think been it's just been thrown out of proportion for nothing. Like I said, I
I,
watched the entire thing versus what the media did with or whatever I saw on the internet. They made it far worse than what it actually is.
I wish, Mr. Bachchan, who is very, very present, omnipresent, so to speak, on social media, including on X, would have actually taken out a tweet in support of this child. I think that
I'm
would have,
surprised he didn't. I was looking for that because normally he writes about everything. Why hasn't he reacted? There was a reaction of his while the child was speaking where he's holding his head. That holding head was like, oh my God, you're far too smart. Like, you know what I mean? A restless, smart child. It wasn't to say, oh, come on, tell him to keep quiet. No, not at all. So he should have ideally written.
yeah, exactly my point. That I wish he would. I mean, there's still time because, you've put this. I mean, as Vedika said, he is the most told child in the country at the moment. And it's not a good place to be. Vedika, we've also seen this generation that's coming up. Some of that behavior I feel is actually normalized today. It's a very different generation, the very different norms, very different boundaries for this generation versus what there was for us. As parents, Shivani, we're still dipping our toes and trying to understand that. Is this bad parenting as well?
I think, for us to make a comment on whether this has been a case of bad parenting, we don't know what this child is going through. We don't know what his family life is. And I don't think, as a psychologist, that gives me any right to comment, partly because of ethics, partly training, partly because we've always been taught that we don't comment on the lives of people who are not our clients, especially if we see them in the media. But to just generally talk about parenting, because I know that parenting has really been hit out in the case of this child. What I would say is it's a very simplistic thing to say that, this child is just purely a product of parenting. Absolutely not. Like, no child today is purely a product of their household because we are living in a digital era. We are living as social beings, right? We are connected to peers, social media, technology, schools, the communities we live in, the society that we live in. So I would say the child is a product of that soil. And it's for us to decide what kind of soil are we producing, what are we trying to cultivate children into. And let's not forget, so as I said, we can't talk about the parenting aspect for this child. That would really not be too fair for us to, pick apart parents who are already probably going through a lot right now, based on something we really don't know. Because looking at the clip, it's easy to make judgments, like, how Shibani pointed out a few nuances. We spoke about a few nuances in the child's behavior and things. Of course, parental expectations may have been a thing. The child would know what a big deal it is to be on a show like KBC.
I totally agree with Vidika because, like I said, I watched the real piece was vis-a-vis what was shown and with what was projected. And I completely agree. And I can tell you from whatever I see and for the number of children that I meet over so many book events that I do and the fact that I also represent or go to schools to talk about power of reading, etc. I recently went to Wellams and I'm getting that back again, primarily because boarding schools versus the way we bring children up home at home. And I can tell you there is you asked about bad parenting. I don't even know what bad parenting means, actually. How can you label parenting with anything? It's parenting. I have a different up a child vis-a-vis you. I've been brought up in a very loud household because my dad home I'm a child from the armed forces. My dad was traveling. He was posted places. So my mother, in order to bring up my brother and me, felt that the only thing that worked was the danda. Vis-a-vis today's children, we're not parents anymore. If I want to even try bringing up my children like my parents did, I'm going to be facing issues or people are judging me. My child, your mental wreck. And that's what I hear and I'm told, and therefore I'm very cautious. We become very cautious in our parenting. So I don't know what bad parenting,
Actually,
to
bad
your question.
parenting is it. I shouldn't have used the word bad parenting. I said softer, gentle parenting.
The parents, but you said right, because rightly, because when you use bad parenting, it's also because parents are being trolled for it, they're being judged, being questioned on their parenting style. And I don't think it's fair to judge a parent or even to question a parent. I mean, keep the child aside and out of it because the child is far too young. Confident child, but I can tell you, Jyotsna, when I was watching his body language, and that's what we were taught in even our soft skills, training and stuff like that. Body language only said he was nervous, but he was confident and he was excited. Getting on television at the age of 10 is huge pressure for the child. And then look at who are watching him and saying, wow, you're going to television, you're going to be on with Big B. He doesn't know, he has no clue who he is. He doesn't know who Big B is. But the fact that there's from his peers, from his friends, from his family, and I can tell you this, there were celebrations before he got on screen. And they would have celebrations when he got off it. Unfortunately, it's turned out to be something else. So I don't, I can't really call the parenting style. I don't think anybody should because everybody has a different style of parenting. But what I can say and what I've seen now is I spent about 3 days at a boarding school. And when there are no parents and the children are managing themselves with their peers or their friends, they're a completely different world altogether. That's the world we've grown up. Discipline, to the extent that, they're standing erect as a yes, ma'am, and absolutely every place. Does it exist with today in this era? I'm not certain. I'm not sure if every child carries that kind of discipline that we've had, or the schools or boarding schools do. So I'm just very saddened and actually hurt also a bit for that, and feel bad for that child because a 10-year-old being taught something that he's completely unaware of. He went there as a confident child. I think is absolutely right. What do you want in our child? What do I want in my child? A child to be confident. I will tell you, if my child were to go on to a similar form, I'm going to actually boost her up and say, don't worry about it. Just chill. Just be yourself, confident. She's probably going to turn out and do exactly that. May not be as much, but the different styles of parenting. But she would also get nervous and say, I know it. I know what it is, so I'll just answer it. Of course I know it. And they do that, don't they? They do that most often when we're sitting with adults, when they're sitting with adults in a conversation. Nobody questions them.
I actually think that this, and I say that so many of these adults who are trolling the world would actually have not been able to do a word on stage when they were 10 years of age.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think,
Absolutely.
and they and us, we didn't have social media. We must have fumbled. We must have said wrong lines on stage. We must have frozen on stage. But there was no social media where they guided it. That's what has just completely changed the dynamics.
social media has created a power dynamic between us on one side and people on the other side, where we feel that, we are different, we are in a being entitled, where we have a right to critique everybody. We've become very opinionated without being introspective and reflective. So, one of the filters I usually do tell people, like, before you put something out, think about it. Would you be able to say this to someone looking in their eye? You wouldn't. Why put it out on the internet?
Right.
I've been saying this now since my book came out about 5 years ago that, our children are different. Next generation is different, and that if we don't understand them and we don't move with them, we'll be left behind. And prime example of that, to be honest, how we've remained in denial that our children are moving and our children are aging and have more aspirations, that our children are confident about what they want, and are to be stuck in the conventional or traditional professions, and they have a very different exposure. And when the book came out, I was told for exactly this, that our children are not like this. Now I find that this collective outrage is again another way of just saying, of denial. Children are not like this. But unfortunately, the children are doing okay. It is okay to be aspirational. It is to be on the stage. It is okay to be at par with what is expected of them, isn't it, Shivani?
If this had happened normally with any of us, if we were, or if we was 10 years old in an era where there was no social media, it would have just been passed on as he's just a child and that's how they are. Look at what it's done to, it's blown it out of proportion, really. Actually, my heart goes out to that child, but I think social media is something that we want must keep our children away from, but it's impossible to just let them be. And I just want to tell these adults who are trolling, there is work to do. Please focus on that and leave this child alone, because what you've done to this child now may have been more traumatic than one can even imagine. I hope the parents are okay, and I hope the child okay. And I'm certain they come from Gujarat. The child is from Gujarat. They are a simple family, and from what I see, if he's the only child, they've done whatever they could for him. Yeah, it's a confident speaking. I see nothing wrong. There was nothing wrong in that video. He was just somebody who knew all this. I'm also in Jyotsna, Vedika, that when we have children and we're watching shows together as a family, he's participating in the same series or the show. He's sitting with the family and watching KBC, and the parents must be asking him, "Do you know the answer to this?" And for just generally, don't we do that? Okay, do you know we're all, it's sweet competition within the family. They would have done that with it. They would have said, "Oh, I can answer this," and it's just confidence building. I see no reason why we should do this. There is just leave the child alone.
I actually, sorry to interrupt you, Shivani. I see a lot in social media bans for younger children. It
I agree.
falls into this. It's not about depriving of something, but it is making sure they stay healthy and fine and not subjected to this kind of vitriolism, that I'm going to end this very soon. So, Vedika, I want to ask you A, closing remarks, and B, discard.
We need to think about the kind of world we are building. Are we normalizing harm? Are we normalizing violence? Are we saying that it is okay to rip apart people for just being who they are? So thinking about that, what is it that we want from children? Why is it that we have this urge to control who they are? Why is it that we want the whole world to sort of fit into our mold, perform to our terms, live up to our scripts? Because the minute they don't, is this fair? Is this kind? And is this really necessary? So I
Also,
think that would be.
and Vedika, I mentioned this right in the beginning that many from your profession, psychologists and doctors who've come up with most bizarre and aggressive responses to this child. I mean, they're supposed to be giving that healing touch. Instead, somebody has said that he should be beaten. Somebody says his parents are beating him. Everybody says not everybody, that's too general, but there have been a whole lot of bizarre reactions. What is going on with people?
What has happened is when, as professionals, we jump into this fire because it's very tempting on a social media world. Let's put that out. Even if it's a rage tweet, even if we're doing it for engagement, we are sort of making it acceptable as a statement because who said it? A professional said it. A psychologist said that, he's had a bad upbringing, he must have had a bad upbringing. And people are further quoting that and using that as context to add to the bullying and to add to their own biases that this is bad parenting. I feel like somewhere as professionals, forget takes all our code of conduct, everything that we are taught. I think we are legitimizing this behavior on the internet. Not just legitimizing violence that, such children deserve to be beaten up or, he must be beaten up or judging the parents. We're making it okay to do that. And that is absolutely not okay. And I hope for the parents, or everybody watching this, please don't lose faith in the mental health space. I know sometimes people do get caught up in seeing, how visible these so-called psycho professionals are, and how some of them, as you rightly said at the beginning, are entering sort of an influencer era. That you please have faith that not every psychologist you meet is going to judge you or your child based on a clip or based on the first thing came out of your mouth. We do hold space. We are supposed to hold space for that human experience.
Shivani,
And I hope the same for his family.
Shivani, ending with you.
I
A kid
just,
gets
as a
trolled.
parent,
As a parent, as the adult in the room, adults have judged a child and felt very good about it. Presumably, I mean, this is their daily quota of trolling a 10-year-old. What does it say about us?
well, I'm actually deeply saddened by the attitude of us. And as a parent, I would urge and request everybody to just leave the child alone and traumatize them. This was a moment of joy. Allow them to celebrate, than to now mourn over some better decision which they were not prepared for. I see nothing wrong in it. It's just a very confident child, and if he's been brought up to speak the way he is, I don't think it's rude. I just think he was nervous, and parents will take care of it. I don't think the others should make it worse for them. So please allow them to celebrate the fact that he was on television, because it's not easy to be sitting in front of Big B. And I hope and I request Big B and celebrities to come forward and support this child, because as a parent, that's the least I would expect. He's been invited to your channel, he's been invited to your show, he's been trolled for something which I don't see is worth being trolled for. And if you think that this child deserves a little bit of empathy and love, you must come all out and support him instead of keeping quiet. As a parent, this is all my request and urge would be. And adults, please leave that child and parents alone. Let them celebrate that moment. I don't know if it's celebratory anymore, but whatever there is.
It's a pretty sad reflection on us, on the adults, as I said, when we cross the line of abusing or trolling your own child. There are lines that have always remained sacrosanct, and this has been one of it. The very fact that we've crossed it, the adults have crossed it, shows how our conversations have hit rock bottom. The outrage that comes only when it's convenient shows what kind of people we've become, what kind of society that is not interested in the real aspects will pick up a child and get their daily dose of trolling, their daily dose of abuse, putting a child in the dock. It's very, very unfortunate to see where we are, especially given that a lot of us have been about mental health in the younger generation. The challenges that they face as is, they coexist in a time where is part of their upbringing, where the internet is part of their upbringing, the digital footprint is part of their upbringing. They have enough challenges of peer pressure to go without having to look at the ads who they would actually expect to be supporting them to also come out for them. It is actually a very sad reflection on us as people. The ideals on social media are well known, but to see psychologists and doctors come out as trolls has been another level of, exposure. And I hope that a lot of us sit back and reflect at what we have done to a child, because a child didn't fit our expectations. A child didn't fit into these boundaries that we have put on our society, that are boundaries that we have put on our children, boundaries that we put on our women, and nobody dares step out of that boundary. I, for one, highly recommend that social media is limited for younger children. I recommend that at least if the adult is not going to own up to being the adult, at least the children are saved from the kind of impact that it would have on them. I'm going to leave this conversation here, Shibani and Vedic. It's wonderful to speak with you, and I know the three of us have, we hope that some people would, at least some known faces, and especially Mr. Bachchan, come up and speak in support of this child, because at the moment that is all he requires. A child who went up to stage, as I may not have been able to at 10 go up and be in front of Mr. Bachchan. I think hats off to this boy for having done that, and just I think we need to put our heads and look at where we've come. We've come a really, really long, bad way down. So it's very unfortunate, and I'm leaving this conversation here. But ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jyotsna, for having us on talk with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for holding that space for us to be able to have this conversation. And I really hope that better sense prevails. We've already done the damage we did now, but we all know social media. There's going to be another child. There's going to be another person. There's going to be another episode. So just for us to remember in future, that what are the lessons we take from this forward.
So before I let both of you go, Shibani, Vedika, kindly recommend one book each that our viewers can read, a book that will make them think, a book for the times.
Jyotsna, I love that you asked this, so I'm taking this on first. Is pretty much on growing up and children and childhood. Is this book called My Friends by Frederick Backman. And I've been recommending that book to everybody for a reason. I would love that everybody pick that book up and read it, for the fact that children should be left alone and they should be children. My Friends by Frederick Backman, his latest book.
And Vedika?
So I know I would be biased if I told parents today to read Shame Depressed. I do recommend it to a lot of parents. It gives very good insight into what are experiencing. But if I had to pick another book, I would say there is a lovely book called Open by Dr. Julie Smith, which is sort of written in a form of letters to open at different points when you're experiencing different feelings. So I think that would be a nice book.
Perfect. Let's open our minds. And that's it for now. Ladies, thank you.